There is something I have never said out loud in 74 years. Not to my sister, not to my closest friend, not to my daughter, not to anyone who has ever sat across from me at a dinner table or held my hand through something difficult. I am going to say it now because I am running out of time and I am tired of carrying it alone. I am 74 years old, and the one person I truly loved in this life, I never told him. Not once. Not in 4 years of mornings and conversations and small moments that meant everything to me and possibly nothing to him. And he married someone else. And I have thought about him almost every single day for 50 years. His name was Edmund. I want to be careful about how I tell this because it is easy to make it sound like a love story, and it was not a love story. A love story requires two people to participate. This was something quieter and lonelier than that. This was one person carrying something in silence for so long that the silence itself became a kind of companion. We met in 1972. I was 22 years old and 3 months into my first real job at an insurance firm in Hartford, Connecticut. I was young enough to still believe that my life was going to unfold the way I had planned it, in a straight and orderly line, one reasonable decision at a time. I had no idea yet how much of life happens in the spaces between decisions, in the pauses, in the things left unsaid. Edmund worked 2 floors above me in the same building. He was 25, dark-haired, quietly funny in a way that surprised you because he did not look like someone who would be funny. He used to come down to the break room in the mornings, not every morning, but most of them, and we started talking the way coworkers do. About small things at first, the terrible coffee, the weather, the supervisor on the 3rd floor who scheduled 9 o'clock meetings on Mondays as though that were a reasonable thing to do to another human being. Then gradually we talked about larger things, books we were reading, where we had grown up, what we thought we wanted our lives to look like in 10 years. He wanted to live somewhere quieter eventually, he said, somewhere with trees. He said cities made him feel like he was always performing and he was tired of performing. I understood exactly what he meant. I did not tell him that either. I knew within 6 months that what I felt for him was not ordinary. I had liked people before, had small feelings that came and went without leaving much behind. This was different. This was the kind of feeling that does not ask your permission. It simply arrives and arranges itself inside you, and you realize quite suddenly that it has been there for a while already, quiet and certain, waiting for you to notice it. I noticed it on an ordinary Tuesday in November. We were sitting in the break room after everyone else had left, and he was telling me about his grandmother, about how she used to make him sit with her on the porch in the evenings and say nothing, just sit, and how he had hated it as a child and now considered it one of the greatest gifts anyone had ever given him. And I looked at him while he was talking, and I thought, I could love this person for the rest of my life. And then I thought, I will never say that. The thought arrived in that order, one immediately after the other, so quickly that they felt like a single thought. And that is how it stayed. That is how it stayed for 4 years. He never said anything directly, but I was not imagining what was between us. I want to be clear about that, because I spent decades telling myself I had imagined it, and I do not believe that anymore. There were moments that were not nothing. A look held a beat longer than conversation required. An evening when we both stayed late and walked to our cars together in the dark parking lot and stood talking for 40 minutes about nothing important, and neither of us suggested leaving. A moment when we were both reaching for something on the same shelf and his hand brushed mine, and we both went very still for just a second before moving apart. Nothing was ever said. We were both waiting, I think. Both assuming the other person would eventually speak first. Both telling ourselves there was more time. There is always more time, until there is not. I told myself I was being careful. I told myself I was being realistic. I told myself that saying something would risk the friendship, and the friendship was worth preserving. These were all reasonable things to tell myself, and none of them were the whole truth. The whole truth was that I was afraid, not of Edmund. Edmund was the gentlest, most decent person I have encountered in 74 years of meeting people. I was afraid of what it would mean if I said it, and he felt the same way, because then I would have to actually live that life. In 1972, in Hartford, Connecticut, that felt like a very exposed and dangerous thing to do. I had watched people get hurt for less. I had learned very young that certain feelings were safer kept interior, kept quiet, kept small, and so I kept it quiet, and small, and interior, for 4 years. In the spring of 1975, Edmund came down to the break room on a Wednesday morning and told me over terrible coffee that he had proposed to a woman named Patricia. He said it with a kind of careful happiness, the way people announce good news when they are not entirely sure how it will be received. I smiled. I told him I was so happy for him. I asked him how he had proposed, and he told me the whole story, and I sat there and listened to every word and smiled through all of it, and inside I was perfectly, completely still. I went home that evening and I sat in my apartment and I did not cry. I want to tell you I cried, but I did not. I just sat for a long time in the quiet and felt the door close. That is the only way I can describe it. I felt a door close somewhere inside me, and I knew, without anyone telling me, that it was not going to open again. I was a bridesmaid at their wedding that September. I stood in a yellow dress that I have never been able to think about since, without a complicated feeling, and I watched him marry her, and I smiled through the ceremony and danced at the reception and drove home alone at 11 o'clock at night and sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment building for longer than I would like to admit. I never told a single person what I felt, not then, not for a very long time. Edmund and Patricia moved to Vermont the following spring. We wrote letters for a while, then Christmas cards, then not even that. By the time I was 30, I had not spoken to him in 3 years. By the time I was 40, I could go weeks without thinking about him. By 50, the thought of him had become something I passed the way you pass a photograph on a wall you have lived with so long you stop seeing it. It is there. You know it is there. You do not stop and look at it anymore. But it was always there. I built a life. I need you to understand that. I had relationships over the years, some of them real and warm and lasting. I had work I cared about, a career in education that gave me more than I expected. I had a daughter who is now 46 and who is one of the finest people I know. I had friends who sat with me through hard things and laughed with me through easy ones. My life was not empty, but there was always this one room, locked. And in that room was the version of my life where I had said something in that break room in the winter of 1972, where I had been brave enough or foolish enough or simply honest enough to say, "Edmund, I think I feel something for you," where I had let him respond however he was going to respond and lived with whatever came next. I never opened that room. I just walked past it every day. For 50 years I walked past it. I heard through someone we had both known at the firm that Edmund passed away in 2019. Heart attack. He was 69 years old. He had been married to Patricia for 44 years. They had 3 children and several grandchildren, and by all accounts a life that was full and good and real. I sat with that information for a very long time. I do not know what he felt back then. I will never know now. Maybe I imagined the moments that felt like something. Maybe saying anything would have cost me the friendship entirely, and the silence was genuinely the right choice. I have told myself that version many times, but I do not believe it, not at 74, not anymore. What I believe is that I was given something rare and I was too frightened to reach for it. And fear is a very convincing companion. It tells you it is protecting you. It tells you it is being sensible on your behalf. It tells you that waiting is wisdom and that silence is safety and that there will be another chance later, a better chance, a safer one. Fear kept me very safe for 50 years, and I am grateful for my life. I am genuinely grateful for all of it. But there is a room I never opened, and Edmund is gone. And the door is locked from the inside now, and I am the only one left who knows what is in there. That is what I wanted to say. If there is someone in your life who makes you feel something real, something that sits in your chest and does not leave, I am not going to tell you what to do with that. I know better than to tell another person what to do with their own heart. But I will tell you what I know from 74 years. Silence feels like protection. It feels like the careful choice, the responsible choice, the choice that keeps everything intact and everyone comfortable. But sometimes what it actually is just fear wearing a sensible coat. And fear will keep you warm, but it will not keep you company. Say the thing, or decide not to say it. But make sure the choice is actually yours. Make sure it is a choice and not just the slow accumulation of days where you kept waiting for a moment that never came. I waited for that moment for 4 years. Then I waited for 50 more. I wish I had said something on a Tuesday in November in 1972 when he was telling me about his grandmother and the porch and the silence. Before I go, I want to ask you one thing. Is there someone in your life you have never said the real thing to? Not, "I appreciate you." The real thing. The one that sits quietly in your chest and never quite leaves. Write their name in the comments. Just the name. Nothing else. I will start. Edmund. I wish I had told him that I understood exactly what he meant.